everybody, and welcome to the finals for the One Piece Card Fest. Wanted to go over the last match and talk about some things that I've heard about the Card Fest and the event, I guess. But before we get into it, make sure we leave a like, subscribe, and if you want to support this channel, you can check out the links in the description. I've got a coupon code for Nen Garden, 5% off using code StrawHatPecan on top of any other sale they're running for their playmats. And I have a TCG player affiliate link. If you're going to be buying any cards for the game, clicking the link just helps support the channel. But let's get into this. So I was wrong. I briefly mentioned some thoughts on my predictions for the finals for this card fest, and I thought Blue Purple Luffy was still going to be in the finals. And yeah, I guess the fact that the gap was closed between that and other decks. We have Zoro versus Rayleigh. Honestly, if I were to pick two other leaders besides Luffy, right, to be in it, I probably would have said one of the other two, even if Luffy was in this, right? But very strong, very popular, very represented decks, right? I think a lot of people are playing both of these leaders. They are very, very strong. And it is a very interesting matchup. There's a lot of tech that goes into this matchup, a lot of decisions, right, with where your swings are going, what it comes down to. Obviously, this is English, so we have the translate. It's not like we're watching the Eastern tournaments, right? If you're not familiar with Rayleigh, he is a 5-life red leader, 5k power. This leader can't have any card in its deck with a cost of 5 or more, and we have activate main. Once per turn, you may reveal 2 events from your hand. One of your characters with a base power of 4,000 or less gains plus 2k power during this turn, so a lot of aggression. Basically, both of these leaders are very aggressive in their own way. And then we have Zoro, Don ×3, activate main once per turn. If this leader battled one of your opponent's characters during this turn, set this leader as active, then your leader can't attack any of your opponent's characters with a base cost of 7 or less during this turn. He is 5 life green, 5k power. Yeah, both very aggressive leaders. A lot of choice comes down to resources, counter, where your swings are going, but a lot of aggression. So let's get into this. I did hear that there were a lot of complications with the Card Fest this year and the organizing of it, the logistics, I guess. There was just a lot of people. There was problems from like the marketplace, from what I've heard, to people getting into their events and their side events specifically, which is, I don't know, that's a lot to hear, right? I personally did not attend, so I can't attest to any of this, but from what I've seen, it was a little bit crazy, you know? But I guess with the fact that these events are getting larger and larger, you know, that is a lot to tackle, right? But at least it is cool to see some very high level gameplay of these decks that we all enjoy, right? These are very popular leaders, very popular characters. So I'm very eager to sit down and watch these games with you. As we can see, the Zoro player for game 1, this is top cut, so it is a best of 3 games, right? Zoro seems to be starting first with a Perona search, picking up the Hachan, which is a nice 2k counter. So I don't know the deck list for either of these players. However, there has been a lot of Fishman being built into Zoro lists. Hachan is a searchable 2k counter off of like the East Blue / all that stuff. So a lot of the searchers for Zoro are able to pick that up. We see Boa coming out on 2 Dawn, I think is a little unfortunate and a little bit of a slower start for Rayleigh. Obviously, it's a very strong piece. And on 3 Dawn, you don't have too many options to get rid of it for Zoro. You have things that can rest it with the 2k counter, and then you just have to swing into it, and having to defend as the opponent would be kind of costly. But we just see Hiyori coming down. The Rayleigh does take the first life, as you're going to be defending the board for the most part, and you're trying to find a really good curve on Rayleigh. But seeing like 2 searchers come down on 2 Dawn for Rayleigh might be a little bit of a better start. For example, Buggy is obviously a very strong character. It requires things like the Perona to swing into it. Even so, you'd have to attach a Dawn to the Perona, as it's immune to KO by Slash, leader and characters, which is a lot of the Zoro's deck. We'll see the Boa just swing into the Hiyori. Doesn't even have to really buff that up, so keeps some info on hand. We'll see if he has the Luffy into another target, which he doesn't, or doesn't play out because he plays the Nami. We'll see a 2k counter. Sanji takes takes another Sanji. Okay, so, but we have that info. Another 2k has been bottom decked from that. Another one Dawn Searcher coming out. There is the buggy. A lot of searching comes out from Rayleigh matches, so I do wonder how long it is going to go for these types of best of 3 rounds. As, yep, we'll see just more and more searches. But going super wide like this is a really great play. Obviously on 4 Dawn, Luffy into another target is super strong. If you can hit that back-to-back for 2 turns, it just becomes a lot for the Zoro to deal with. Even though on a 4 Dawn play, you wouldn't be able to attach 2 Dawn to your leader characters so that Luffy would be buffed. So it is a little bit more susceptible for the Zoro to play out like Tashigi, for example, and swing into the Luffy. But just having a nice secondary body off of that is very good. We'll see the Nami getting taken out by the Perona. And then, yep, Zoro just doing Zoro things, swinging at the boa, and then swinging at life. It is very crucial, though, that not using the boa's secondary effect to trash yourself to attach to Rested Dawn, especially this early on. You kind of just want as wide of a board as possible because you know Zoro's going to rest something and swing into it. So if you're trashing one of your own characters, although you are swinging higher, I think it is more value to keep as many bodies on the board as possible, because even in situations like this, like that Perona is able to attack some of your bodies, right? But we do see the Luffy coming out, so that will make him go a little bit wider. And plays out a boa off of that. None of the 3-cost Sanji coming out does attach a Dawn to the buggy. Although, if there is 2 attached Dawn throughout your field, that Luffy gains plus 2k power, right? Becomes a base of 6k for your opponent's turn as well. If that buggy has attached Dawn, and that's what is buffing the Luffy, and the buggy is removed, is KO'd, then that Luffy would lose the power. So we'll probably see some more Dawn being attached to the leader here. Maybe with one of the boa's effect. But he's buffing up the boa and going at life. Is he thinking about defending it? Yeah, he does 1k. Okay, so that was at life. Interesting, he's leaving the Perona up because it can be a threat to some of the... And he does take, so he's just a lot of hits at life. Plays out the Nami off of life. That is a great card. Obviously, it's a trigger. Play this card. It's a searcher for East Blue. Finds a lot of your counter, which he does. Fine. And then also that Nami, although being a 2k power body, can swing into some of the searchers from Rayleigh, right? Like the 1-cost Nami or Shakiyaku that have a base of 2000 power, right? So he does trash the boa and attaches Dawn. I guess they're going over. There's a lot to keep track of with Rayleigh. So he attaches Dawn to the leader just so that Luffy can't lose the power, right? If he gets rid of the buggy, that's one thing. But if the Dawn is attached to leader, there's no way to get rid of that so that Luffy will stay at 6k power. It's easier to defend. Even if... Oh, and he attaches some Dawn to Perona and does let the buggy go. Even if you are able to rest it. So we'll see. I'm imagining, though, that the boa is a very easy target. Goes 7 left with the Tashigi. A lot of these are very big hits. He doesn't have any Dawn open for the Conqueror's Haki, the Supreme King, right? So see what he's resting now, if he's going to go into the... Because he doesn't have a lot of Dawn besides his rested, right? So if he rests the Luffy, he could get out of it. And then leaving 2 bodies up on this turn for the Rayleigh player could be pretty lethal. The Zoro is still at 4 life, though. But if he has some extra rush, we'll see if he defends this. It is a lot to deal with. However, keeping these bodies on board can be very crucial. And again, this is a 6k power body, so we do see some counter out getting an unblockable out, which is a very key piece for the deck. Once the 8 cost Mihawk comes down for green Zoro, it is a tricky body to deal with, as Mole Pistol does not clear that 8k power stat line, only a 7k power. So we are seeing an observation hockey come out, attaching that active Don to leader. Looking at top 4, he does find the Sanji now, so maybe he'll play it off of a Luffy. It's very interesting. It's these matches, they're very aggressive, but it comes down to a lot of little pokes early on. A lot of the little bodies actually determine the board state. Obviously, Zoro has stuff like Dashiki, which are these insane stat line, like a vanilla stat line, but with an amazing effect, like 5-7, right? Or 5-6 with Cavendish, stuff like that. However, Rayleigh does use a lot of that mole gun to remove bodies like that. We'll probably see that coming up on a future turn if he can survive that long. But again, that unblockable is a very big piece. Getting around that Mihawk blocker can come down to it. Oh, we see the Boa getting buffed here. I wonder how he'll respond to board, or just going to be pushing life. But if he's using the Boa as a secondary effect, I guess he can just safely ignore the Perona. Plays out the Shakiyaku. Look at top 5 for a red event or a Monkey D. Luffy. Is that armament hockey? Okay. We'll see how much Don he leaves up. I will say I've seen more and more Zoro lists running less of the Dead Man's Game, the Hody event card, right? So leaving these 2 Don up could be pretty safe, right? If you're thinking about playing around that or playing around Hody, for example, you might want to leave up 3 Don, but with less and less... Oh, he does go with the Dashigi, and that is gone. Although he does have another one on board. So leaving the 2 Don up is fairly safe. I think for the most part, they are like a 1 of or 2 of in the deck, depending. Right now, something that could be pretty lethal for Rayleigh is a lot of Zoros are running Electrical Luna, which is that 3 Dawn event that keeps every cost 7 or less character rested, which obviously hits everything in Rayleigh's deck. And with the fact that Zoro is still at 4 life, he's in a very healthy spot. He does have ways he could probably rest something like the Luffy and then also use it. We'll see. Also, I believe Richard played a lot of Red Zoro before, so I think it's really cool to see just like how these very popular characters continue on in the game in different forms with new leaders and such, right? Even so, like Rayleigh has been compared to like a new Red Zoro leader. And we see the Perona going into the Boa here, just to demand some cards out of hand or let it go. He does let it go. He could be afraid of things like the restand event. He is only at 1 life for the Rayleigh player, which is very much in lethal opportunity, right? Zoro can always swing, well, once you're on 10 Dawn, 12k twice at life with that restand event, which can definitely close out games. Rayleigh does not really run blockers. Even if he did, it doesn't really protect too much against Zoro, as he can just restand after you block out with a character and then attack your life again, right? But not too applicable in this matchup. This does play into a lot of the mind games, and not mind games so much, but it's just knowing when to guard your board, especially against Zoro, right? Because you never know when you're going to have to defend against life. He does use the Supreme King, the Conqueror's Haki, to get out of the Tashigi swing, and now everything on Zoro's board is minus 1k for the turn as he rested that additional active Dawn. Super good counter event against Zoro specifically. It is really, really good, but we do see the Mihawk blocker coming out, and now the Zoro, even though it's minus by 1k power, is going at Luffy. Still a big ask to defend. However, Everybody on the board matters, especially now as we're coming down to trying to get into lethal range. But again, Zoro being at 4 life, I think it really comes down to how strong of a start Rayleigh can get and how much you can keep your board safe, which is obviously very hard to do. Uses the other Supreme King Haki, restands, and then goes at life again. Which is still a big ask to defend, even though it's minus by 2k. So he does counter out of it with another unblockable, which is very interesting. You know, being at 4 life, you're not really in range to threaten so much with the unblockable. It's going to be a lot of math and a lot of swings from board, right? Which we were able to keep the board up. But now with that Mihawk blocker, everything's a little bit trickier because that 8k power stat line is just so hard to get rid of. Or get over, I would say, for Rayleigh. So we are using leader ability. Buffing the Luffy. So that is a 6k Luffy. As soon as 2 Dawn is on attached, which one is getting attached with the observation Haki, then that Luffy will be 8k. So there's another, I believe, an armament Haki, which definitely will help when going for a game. Right, the armor and Haki is a very good tool for helping you swing efficiently with your Dawn. Let's see. So he's gonna attach Dawn to Luffy. Okay, so now the Luffy is 9 because it's gotten buffed by leader. There is 2 attached Dawn, so he's going 9k to Shigi and lets it go. Interesting. Goes 1 with Nami. Till get top 5. I do see a Sanji. Okay, so he takes the Sanji. Probably looking for some counter. Again, at 1 life, you are in a pretty rough spot, but still not unwinnable. A lot of the times, especially towards the later bit of the game, you're kind of just hoping that the Zoro player doesn't have enough counter to survive a bunch of these 5 to 7 to 8k swings, right, with your board, especially having 2 Luffys and a Sanji on board. We'll see if Zoro is able to go. So that's just a 6k with the Luffy. Is going to go for game in this following turn or try to remove board. Again, things like Electrical Luna could definitely buy you another turn in a situation like this, especially if you know you're safe from rush cards with like a blocker or just how much life you have. It does 2k out of it. That is the 2k that I was talking about, that rests a 2 cost and then KOs a 1 cost rested character, right? So that is a big piece to get rid of some of the 1 cost searchers for Rayleigh, like the buggy, that are typically pretty annoying to deal with. So just a lot of 6k swings, but this late in the game, he's still very healthy. Does take it again. Down to 2. And then he blocks, goes 1 to get out of the AK from lead. But again, leaving 2 Dawn open, you're pretty safe, right? The Kankazaki can definitely help you get out of those multiple 12Ks. Just the Perona getting so much value over the course of this game with how many things it's been able to swing into and get rid of, right? Just eating up attacks, or eating away attacks, I guess, from Rayleigh. But as the pressure of having to close out games against these aggro decks, right? Both of them, if you give them an extra turn, can always turn the tide. We'll see. We'll see. It is always a choice, though. If you want to swing with that Mihawk, it's an 8k, so one Supreme King doesn't get out of that. It would get out of a 7k swing if you use the additional active Dawn to rest to minus 1k power to the entire board, as it does plus 2,000 power as the counter, and then minus 1k on top of that, so it gets out of a 7k swing. But here we are. This is what it comes down to. A lot of the choice of how much you swing, where those swings are going. He's going at the Luffy. Very interesting. Still a 2 life, so if you are able to properly lock down the board or respond to it, he could be in a pretty safe spot. I do really wonder what the players' match history from today was, and I wonder what the deck breakdown for the event was as well. I might look into that towards the end, but does let the Luffy go. Very interesting. Again, it's a very big decision, especially with that much Dawn left open for the Zoro player. How much you can choose to defend your board when you know multiple swings can be coming at your life here, and at 1 life, you are very much in lethal range. So if you over protect a character on board, it can definitely come back to bite you. And I think we do see the restand event for Zoro in hand. Of course, being in Top Cut, I believe the deck lists are public for all the players, so they know the possibilities, right? A lot of thought going into the math and what numbers he can get out of. Again, the Conquerors Hockey event is just such a strong counter event. It is very intimidating when the Rayleigh has 2 Dawn open, and of course, you know, a lot of it's what's in his hand as he's been revealing cards throughout the course of the game. Dushi the Tashigi coming out. And we see the Nami going into Nami. Again, getting a lot of value off of your small power searchers on both sides, right? A lot of them connect as 5k swings for the Rayleigh side. And then Zoro using his, obviously, to respond to those little bodies. And we see the restand event coming out. That allows the Zoro to swing at board again because he hasn't used the activate main of his leader ability, which would turn off the ability to swing at original cost 7 or less characters. So using the restand event, not as a going for game, however, as a I am trying to take control of the board state and clear your side so I know I can survive, right? Being at 2 life, having that Mihawk blocker really does make it hard for the Rayleigh player to get enough swings. Down to 0 life, so definitely no way you are living another turn. This would have to be it for Rayleigh. And again, you need 4 swings right now to go through because of that blocker. And again, typically we see for Rayleigh lists, most of the time they're running 4 rush cards, either 2 Zoro, 2 Kid Killer, 4 Zoro, right? There are obviously ways they can pick up those cards through searches, but every search right now would lead to less and less Dawn. He does have an unblockable, which definitely can threaten. He's now looking through the trash, I guess, trying to decide whether or not he can have a chance to search for those cards he needs, if he needs more rush options, because right now he does. Okay, so he's buffing the Luffy. Obviously, even if you pick up one of the rush cards, you wouldn't be able to use your lead ability on that. He does have a good bit of counter, but again, against Zoro, I don't think right now he could clear the Mihawk. He does search with Buggy. Very interesting. Trying to find some counter. Obviously, Buggy is a brick in hand. He does find the mole pistol. So is he going to go for another turn? I mean, I just don't know. Obviously, the mole pistol can clear the Dashigi, but then he still has the Mihawk blocker plus Zoro leader swing. He's at no life. Does go 8 at life, and he takes. Does get a trigger, it seems like, or he's thinking about math from swings possibly. Again, that mole pistol will probably be used this turn since it doesn't have any counter, and if you're trying to last another turn here, you're going to be using that 4 Dan to clear a body. Again, the Dashigi for the most part. But still no way to really deal with the Mihawk. And again, if you think the Zoro has another 3-cost resend event in hand, that is just deadly at this point. It is really interesting to see how these two are very aggressive decks, but it goes about it in such different ways. And it's really cool to see the interaction and the responses in this kind of a matchup, right? The two aggro decks of the format. So he knows now that the leader has swung. There's no more chance for unblockable for the turn. So even if he plays out a rush card to swing again, he would be safe with that Mihawk. So he just sees a mole pistol coming out. Again, 2 Dan open, going through the trash to look for 2Ks and probably Supreme King, right? Even if you have 2 at this point, you know, you still do have to think hard about the math. Going 8, again, even with a Supreme King, this would require another card on top of it, which it does give with the Luffy, right? So now everything is minused by 1000 power for the turn. Looks like he is just going, this is 11k at Luffy, which again, not totally unnecessary, right? At this kind of point of game. Does use another one, so that minuses him to 10k for the turn. But at this point, I just don't think he has enough cards to get out of it, right? So 10k down to 8, so still needs two cards, right? And then yeah, GG, just short. Almost was able to get out of it, right? If he had a few more cards in hand. But looks like Zoro picks up game 1. Very aggressive. I'm not saying that Rayleigh had like a super slow start, but I think if Rayleigh sees like the most amazing curve possible, it's very hard for Zoro to keep up with that. And even with how consistent Rayleigh matches are, like there's tons of searching opportunity you have in the deck, you could still see a bit of a slower start right before you start searching for your key pieces. You know, he was able to get out a few Luffys on the board, but the Zoro was just able to, you know, do Zoro things and rest and swing into them, right? So I know I just made a video on Green Zoro talking about how, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward deck. However, like I mentioned, once you look at top tournament, like top cut, like the big top tables at tournament, like you see a lot of the thought just goes into the resources, where you're swinging, right? How to use your utility, which there's a lot of very good cards in Zoro. Obviously that 3-cost restand event is just so strong, it's insane, right? Giving you so many versatile options to either go for game or continue to clear board, right? Tashigi's super strong. There are a lot of choices in Zoro for how to deal with Rayleigh. And again, sometimes it just comes down to those last cards in life, the ending hand, whether or not you have the counter to survive, some rush attacks and such like that. But very interesting first game. So getting into game 2, see that Zoro is starting off with another Perona search. Pick up the Hachan. It's just the same replay, man. But a Nami searcher coming out on 1 Don. We'll see if he finds a stronger start. He does find a Luffy off of that, so having the Luffy for Don, we'll see if he plays it out or what happens. We do see the buggy coming out, so this does feel like a pretty strong start, right? Again, that buggy is a little bit harder for Zoro to deal with, and it becomes a 5k swing much easier as it is a 3k power stat line. That does make a big difference, right? On 4 Don for Rayleigh, if he plays out the Luffy, that means you can get typically a 5k swing with leader, and then maybe another 5k swing if you have a 2 cost or 2k power searcher, right? You can buff that 2k power searcher with leader ability by 2k, and then the Luffy on play gives a rested Don to one of your leader characters, right? So you can give that to that searcher to allow it to swing 5k, but with Buggy's case, that allows you to get a 5k and a 6k swing, which does make a big difference early game, right? Getting an extra 2k out of your opponent's hand by chance. But we see the Mihawk getting picked up, and again, you saw how that is a very big card for Rayleigh to deal with, right? It's just outside of range of Mole Pistol, so the Nami is able to get rid of that Hiyori, and then again allowing the Rayleigh to get possibly 2 swings on the Zoro's life. We saw him pick up a non-counter card, right? So after he picked up a 2k from turn 1, though. But no Luffy coming out here using the observation hockey to pick up an armament hockey. Or no, picks up the Sanji. And then it goes 5 of life. We see a Cavendish coming out for the counter. And then, ooh, just playing out the Zoro to get another 5k swing. Again, just trying to get out a lot of cards. He does take. And then we see the 2k Hachan. Right? So now the Zoro, a lot lower on life. And this is, again, seemingly a much stronger start for Rayleigh. The Peronas are able to just respond to those 1 cost 2k power searchers, though. Tashigi coming out not to rest anything, but to still just establish that body and allow him to swing into the Zoro, and then takes a life. So very interesting. I think a lot of the choice does come for a 4 Don play for the Luffy. Might not be the best against Zoro, as you know you can't really defend that Luffy as he's not buffed up with the attached Don yet. So does buff the buggy. We'll see if he plays out since he has the Sanji, right? That is a very good play off of the Luffy, as even if the Sanji gets rested and KO'd, you still draw a card, so it's good resources replacing itself, possibly. And then the Luffy obviously will be a 6k swing or a 6k body. He's resting the 4 Don. Yep, so Luffy coming out. And yep, the Sanji coming out with that. So now just 1 more Don. So then that Luffy is a 6k. And leaving up a Don for the Conqueror's Haki. Getting very aggressive. The Zoro's getting much lower in life. Again, even with that bigger body, the Tashigi can't swing into the buggy as it's immune to slash. So he is going 3k with the Perona. It's interesting he gives it up. I mean, it is a lot to deal with, right? If you use Conqueror's Haki that early, that kind of loses that 2k power value off the initial counter. It goes a pretty big swing with Tashigi. I guess he's just responding equally to the amount of pressure the Rayleigh is putting onto him. So he rests and goes 8 into the Sanji, again allowing him to draw a card, but just putting on the pressure to both players' life. I like these kind of aggression-based matches, I'm going to be honest, you know? It's a lot of keeping track of hand, the value of counter, you know, protecting the board when applicable, and really the calls come down to when you're defending and when you're just letting things go, right? A lot can be learned from these types of matches, I think. Obviously, the Zoro's board is getting a little aggressive, but very quickly with how Rayleigh works, you can go pretty wide just as easily, right? Just rebuilding that entire board in one turn. We'll see what he searches with in what order. So he's playing out the Nami. See if he picking up the Sun. I'm gonna be honest, I think the biggest thing I'm surprised about, he hasn't whiffed on the Nami yet, which does, right, like, does happen a lot. However, like I say a lot, it comes down to knowing when to swing or search with what archetype searcher, right? You know you have X amount of cards left that you haven't seen that are in this said archetype, right? Nami obviously doesn't pick up a lot of the events in Rayleigh, but it does find a lot of the Straw Hat cards. It finds your Mole Pistol. So knowing that you haven't seen X, Y, or Z card in the Straw Hat archetype yet can lead you to just upping your chances for finding this on that top 5 search, right? And here we see another Luffy coming down to another Sanji. Very strong board presence, attaching that Don so the Luffys gain even more power, making them stronger to defend. And again, leaving some Don open to defend those Luffys with the Conqueror's Haki. We do see counter coming out for the Zoro, and he does get rid of a Tashigi. Very interesting, you know, knowing when to pivot for life versus board, right? We'll see how much can be rested if the Zoro chooses to play out the Mihawk blocker, which it does look like he is, yeah. So he's playing out the Mihawk, going back to 5 Don. We'll see if he has just 4 Don. Anything to rest an additional body. Doesn't look like it, so he's just going to be swinging, yep, at the Luffy. Okay, he lets it go. It was a big 9k, so even with the Conqueror's Haki, it would still be a lot to defend with both of that swing and the Tashigi, right? Knowing that Tashigi would be still a 7k swing, so you still need a 2k for that on top of the counter for the leader swing. But does counter out with the 2k and the unblockable, knowing that there's still a big leader swing coming at you, so you don't want to go down to 0 life here, right? Obviously countering out of the smaller swing, knowing that that big swing is still coming at you, right? So once again, down to 1 life for the Rayleigh player. However, this is in a much better spot as the Rayleigh player has 2 very decent bodies on board. Both of them will quickly become 6k power, right? As soon as there's 2 rested or attached Don across the board, that Luffy will become a 6k power body. And of course, the Sanji's already 6k. So those become 8k once leader ability hits. We see it goes on the Sanji, right? So I guess maybe not going to swing with the Nami Searcher. Attaching 1 Don for the observation to look at top 4 for a red event or a cost 3 or higher. Picks up another Luffy. We'll see, does he have the counter to live another turn though with the Mihawk and the Tashigi on board? He might have an answer for the Tashigi, right? Could just pressure it with some swings. Plays with the Shakuyaku, so that's already 2 Don down for the turn, so 8 remaining. Does pick up more counter, even more and more and more, right? Which just leads to, again, the kind of mind games you have to go for with like the math on lethal turns against Rayleigh. You know, pretty much half the cards in the deck are events, but all of them are at least a 2k counter, right? So we're seeing, ooh, a 9 going at Tashigi. Okay, yeah, looking for a 2k counter on top of the block if you choose to defend it like that. Let's see. So he's just going 6k with Luffy. He could block this, however, with so much Don left open, that would leave the Mihawk very vulnerable, right? He does 2k out of it, so getting some cards out of the Zoro player's hand. As you can see, the hand is not very large for the Zoro player. Is that just 2 in hand? It looks like he's put on the table. So this is honestly a very good spot for the Rayleigh to be in. However, it's still, it could be anyone's game at this point because of how both players are very low in life, right? It comes down to a lot of these like 5k swings with like rush cards, as you saw early game with that rush Zoro coming out just to poke 5. That same type of deal happens when going for lethal against Zoro, especially with the Mihawk blocker out. Does block the Mihawk against the leader swing, but with so much left, I wonder, are we just gonna see another Luffy coming out? Okay, there's the rush Zoro, and attaches and goes 7. I like leaving again 2 Don open, so putting Zoro down to 2 life, 1 blocker, very similar to the first game, but with so much and again very little hand size. Knowing that he has some of the Supreme King, the Conqueror's Haki, and with the 2 Don open, could definitely be able to survive this turn. And again, with the board he has, even with these 1-cost searchers he played out, those again with things like Armament Haki could very quickly become 5k swings, which at a very low hand size for Green Zoro can be the difference between winning and losing, right? Even with that big blocker open to possibly eat up an attack. So again, looking at the trash, yep, very, very much, yes, looking at counter, but I think for the most part, checking how many Conqueror's Haki you could have, right? And then that changes the math just slightly, right? For that -1 for the turn, but it still does affect it greatly when you're both trying to manage board and set up for lethal if he's thinking about not going up for it this turn. Obviously, again, if he has the restand event for Zoro, which trying to look at the hand, but also, I mean, if he doesn't, he doesn't. If he has the restand event, he just needs to get out of the Mihawk in 1 swing. Looks like, oh, is he going to attach? Is he going to try to clear board? If he goes at the Sanji first, which is the lowest power stat line rested body right now, that 3-cost Sanji, but drawing that extra card could mean the difference of him saving the Luffy or the Zoro, something like that, right? But just poking 3 at the Sanji, could see it given up. He does have the 1k counter, it seems, from a Luffy, right? That the Zoro player knows is in his hand from the previous search, but just lets it go to draw a card. Again, like I said, that extra card could be the difference between protecting a bigger body like the Luffy or Zoro, which can threaten lethal even more so. But ooh, another Mihawk. That is actually very threatening. We'll see if he swings with the other one. He goes at, again, the lower power body, the Zoro. Lets it go. So now he is very rough spot. He has 4 swings, but with 2 blockers and 2 life, you would need, it's still another swing unless you're able to remove the 1 blocker. But again, Mole Pistol cannot hit that 8k power stat line. So we'll see 2 Don coming out for the Boa. If he has unblockable, that could be a good choice, but Zoro would just have to survive 1 swing before, you know, getting down to 0 life. And Again, even though the 2K power stat line searchers can become a threat, it's not that hard to counter out of. I mean, pretty low hand size for Zoro, so we'll see. But attaching with the observation hockey, 2 leader. I just don't think there's any way, right, the Rayleigh player can last an additional turn, right? So he has to somehow get enough swings out here. So popping the boa to attach more to the leader. Still 4 swings. You need all 4 to go through before leader if you have unblockable, or you need an extra swing. But going with leader first, so we know he's safe. He gives counter on top of it too to get out of an 8K. So that is a pretty big sign. You know, I'm confident in the counter I have in hand, right? Does look like he has 2K at the very least. And he's at, I think, the 0 cost event. So he has counter. And oh, he is reducing the Mihawk to a 3K power body and popping one of the Perona. Even if you are able to get rid of that Mihawk, is that enough to survive? I don't think so. At 0 life, still with 1 Mihawk blocker and all of Zoro's Dawn, his hand size is rather large at this point. But again, is it enough to survive? So he blocks this, so that way he has to give up another swing into the Mihawk blocker, which is 1 not going into his life, right? And then he's clearing the Perona with the Nami. So Zoro's still at 2 life. 1 blocker. He's very safe. Well, safe for this turn, right? Okay, so he's splitting the Dawn. We'll see. Goes 12 of life. Uses the Conqueror's Hockey. So that goes up +2 for the Rayleigh. And then another Conqueror, so that's -2K for the turn. And +4. So he's at 9 against 10. So just a 2K. And then, oh my god, yeah, he does get it. Okay, wow. Insane. Even though I think the second game was a stronger feel for the Rayleigh player, that is a 2-0 for the Zoro. So Zoro ends up winning Cardfest. I think both of them are going to Worlds, right? I want to say. But yeah, really cool to see Zoro winning it. I'm a big Zoro fan, but I love playing Rayleigh for a bit. It's a very fun deck. They're both very aggressive, as you can see, you know? A lot of swings coming to life. The board obviously dictates a lot of it. And it's interesting to see how they deal with each other's board in just such very different ways, you know? On paper, it's hard to think of how the Rayleigh can respond to like the big bodies that Zoro plays, all these like 7K, well, 6 to 8K power stat lines. But, you know, there's a lot of back and forth. And even so, with that 2 12K swings coming in, who knows? That Supreme King Hawk Conqueror's Hockey, right? What can I say? That is such a strong card. But yo, congrats to Zoro player Richard for taking it. That is just some aggressive One Piece, right? Just aggressive gameplay. Oh, speaking of more stuff to get excited about, we have so many things to be hype about for upcoming tournaments. I just want to talk about because they showed it off in the same stream. The 3rd anniversary events, Treasure Cup. These top prizing cards are amazing, but also something special we got here that, speaking of Zoro, very hyped to see for top 4, which is previously, I don't think, was a prizing bit, right? Like, for Treasure Cups, I think this is new. The serialized Zoro for top 4 at a Treasure Cup. I need to go hard for this. It is so cool. The artwork is amazing. Zoro, obviously insanely popular character. This is just such a cool design for the leader. I just want to highlight this, especially after seeing Zoro win, right? What an amazing thing to see. So much. And also, apparently they talked about EBO 4 being a first release for us here in the West, similarly to how we had like the starter decks like ST 23 to 28 were like released over here first, but we're getting this like something about EBO 4 as well, which is so far down the line to think about. They haven't even gone through all the EBO 3 releases to talk about, but just some stuff to keep in mind. And again, oh my god, I'll have this VOD obviously linked in the description so you can check out some of the things for yourself to look at some of the announcements. But like, my goodness, some of the reveals. And also they showed off the English OP 13, the red mangas, more stuff I'll just never pull, but my goodness, set 13, so hype. Obviously anniversary set, it's gonna be hype. If you hadn't seen before, they have 2 versions of the Three Brothers mangas. Very amazing cards. This red tint is just absolutely beautiful. And again, more stuff that I'll just cry because I won't pull it for myself. But if we ever do, it's going to be on a shelf back there. Man, they're so cool. They're so amazing. I love set 13 is very hyped to me. I think we're just eating so good as One Piece fans right now, right? We've got hype cards. Tournaments are getting hyper. They're giving us more and more prizing, right? Serialized leaders for winning a treasure cup. Not even a regional, but treasure cups. Like, so much to think about with all of these prize cards, with the sets coming out. I was hyped about set 12. We've got Premium Booster 2 coming out that's hype. Set 13 anniversary right after. Amazing set. And then EBO 3 and 4 and all of that stuff they're announcing, teasing us with. We've got the simultaneous release that'll happen months and months from now, but like still coming up, right? Stuff to keep on your calendar, right? But my goodness, I think just overall, we're eating so well as One Piece fans. Looking at the tournament breakdown, I did see that there was a lot of interesting decks. There was a yellow OP03 Katakuri in top 8, which is crazy to see. That deck is obviously still around. I think it was using a lot of the 6-cost Kuma, right? To just be craziness. That card is just super strong. But yeah, a lot of variants in decks that are played. I think a lot of people are... There's a lot of criticism going around with... I think it's a very... I don't say, because I'm not like a big end player, right? Top end player, but a lot of people talking about like dice roll heavy metas and stuff like that. And I think it is, especially when you're talking about specific matchups, that you're going to see a lot like Zoro into Rayleigh and the Zoro mirror matchup specifically. Obviously mirror matchups can depend a lot on dice roll, but a lot to think about, especially after this tournament. You know, Card Fest want to be one of the biggest events, right? Nationals right before Worlds, you know, to really give us a like reflection on how the meta is working out. But overall, it's exciting to see for the most part. I wish that the Card Fest showed off more One Piece matches, because obviously it's Card Fest, so they go through all of the Bandai games, right? But still really, really cool to see. Love seeing the finals. Very interesting to see Zoro being 2-0 winner, right? But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about Card Fest. If you went, let me know what you guys thought. Hopefully I'll be able to attend some events in the future. I would love to show up and meet some of y'all, or, right, you know, I mean, it'd be kind of dope to play in it too, right? But it'd be nice to go. Let me know what you guys thought. If you went, how it was, your experience. If you played in it, let me know too. You know, let me know down in the comments if you're excited about some of the releases, the cards, sets, tournaments, anything. There's a lot to be excited about down in those comments. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.